Hello, everybody. Welcome to the top 32 of the VML season 12. If you are new here, just let me give you a little bit of an explanation of who we are. We are the VML. We're sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. Thank you so much. I am Magic Mishamigo, and this week I am joined by the one, the only, the nerdy Steve. How are you doing,
Hello.
Steve?
I am fantastic and thank you for having me. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Well,
And I'm very excited to watch some Magic tonight.
heck yes, I am also excited to watch some Magic. The top 32. These are going to be some really good games. These players have worked so hard. So, just to give you an idea of what they've gone through, we're an 11-week long MTGA league, which showcases the talents of amazing people of marginalized genders within the Magic community. This is season 12. We have been around for 12 seasons. That already kind of blows my mind. We started, I think, season one was maybe 16 people. We are now at a total of 128 players each season. And those seasons they fill up real fast. So like if you're not in within like the first, couple hours, good luck. But yeah, so we divide our players up into 16 divisions. They go head to head for the first 7 weeks, doing a round robin play. We had last week was our wild card round. The top person in each division automatically makes it to the top 32, but the next 32 in line are duking it out nowadays, and they're fighting for those last 16 positions. So yeah, top 32 is this week. So, what are they playing for, you might ask? Well, in addition to cash prizing, the top 16 get qualifier weekend badges, and the top 8 get RC invites, and they get to compete in our capstone event, the VML Championships, where the top 8 players from seasons 11, 12, and 13, so our last season, this season, and the next season, they're going to all fight it out, and the top 2 players get Pro Tour invites. The the fact that we sent 2 people to the Pro Tour this, last, you know, VML championships is kind of a wild thought, and the fact that we're gonna do it again, even wilder. So exciting. Lots of stuff on the line, and this is really a make it or break it week because the top 16 are the ones that, get the qualifier weekend badges, so this is a very important weekend for many of our players. Well, you ready to see what the players are gonna be playing?
I am ecstatic to see.
All right. Well, let's head over to our metagame breakdown. So, um, we've got Teamer Analyst and Boros Convoke at 5 each, Dimir Midrange and 5 Color Legends 4 each, some Esper Midrange, Domain Ramp and Bant Toxic 2 each, and then we have fair amount of one-offs. Azorius Control, Golgari Mid-Range, 4-Color Legends, Gruul Aggro, Jeskai Control, Mono Red Aggro, and Orzhov Discard. Steve, you want to talk about any of these decks in particular? Some that are maybe some of your favorites, some you don't like so much?
Well, I am very excited and I don't know if we will be seeing it, but the Orzhov discard I think we are seeing tonight, and I think it's a very fascinatingly unique deck and has a lot of cool, intricate combos and types of like card advantage and stuff. And I'm very, very excited because that's a little unique and a much more different than what I'm used to seeing in standard.
Oh, no, absolutely. I wanna say that I haven't seen very many Orzhov builds in general this entire season. Esper Midrange has been a pretty, uh, you know, it's been a recurring competitor. Just, Rafine is such a strong card, and there's a lot of support in all 3 of those colors, but actual Orzhov, I feel
Hmm.
like we had a lot of Orzhov love a few seasons ago, but it's kind of fallen out of favoritism. And, so to see Orzhov make it back in a top 32, pretty exciting.
Hmm.
I know.
And
Go
and
ahead.
I also want to go on. I also Teamer Analyst and Boros Convoke. They've been here. I've been seeing them all over standard, and while I always root for, the underdog decks, I also do like to see the very consistent powerhouses, also do their thing. And I'm excited for that too.
Oh, absolutely. I love that for the top 2 decks, you have an extremely aggressive one, and then Temur Analyst is basically kind of just a combo deck.
Mhm.
So it's nice to see aggro finding its place, combo finding its place, and then I feel like you have a ton of mid-range just to fill out, the mid game.
Yeah.
Um, and then what surprises me is that we don't really have a lot of, control decks. We have the one Azorius control, but control's kind of fallen out of favor, I think. Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, Control, I think, is in a very interesting place right now. With Teamer Analyst being such a very strong deck in the metagame, I think it in general has a very, very strong control matchup because you just almost need one spell to resolve, and then you can kind of like get the mana advantage and then the card advantage. And it's so hard for a control deck to prey on that. And while the other top deck we have is Boros Convoke, which is incredibly, incredibly aggressive. So if you're a control deck being in this metagame, it's very, very hard, specifically game one, to have a good matchup against a combo deck and a very aggro deck. So it kind of makes the control have a less of a powerful presence in the metagame.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. All right. Well, are you ready for our first match of the evening?
I hope.
Same. I always hope so too. Well, to start us off, we're going to have Amy James, and she is playing Dimir midrange. So for this one, you got your bats, you got your gicks, you got your preachers. Um, Taking me to bat church, please. Um,
Mhm.
that's the kind of church I want to go to.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, Amy asking her how it feels to make the top 32. She said that she feels validated to make it this far. Got to keep playing well from here and seal the deal. I love it. Commitment. It's great. Then, also asked a little bit about, favorite planeswalkers. I love that she said Chandra feels like a cop out, but then said she has a soft spot for Xenagos.
Mhm.
Just funky little dude who got persecuted for partying too hard. I
Exactly.
feel you. I feel you, Xenagos.
We've all been there.
Exactly. And then against Amy this week, we have, the one, the only Caroline on Boros Convoke. All right. Yeah. I actually had the, very lovely opportunity to meet Caroline in Amsterdam last weekend. It was so nice. We got to go do a little bit of shopping, got to look at some Miffies. Just you're out there, Caroline. Great time. Loved meeting you. And wishing both of our players good luck. Let's get into the action. All right. We are watching from Caroline's side. So when we get to the top 32, everything is done by seeding. So if you are the higher seed, you get to choose if you are going to be on the play or be on the draw. Amy, I believe, was the higher seed this week and chose to be on the play. If anyone was wondering why Caroline may have elected to draw first. All right. So this seems like a good starting hand. Both novice inspectors and the Voldaren Epicure. Unfortunately, no gleeful demolition, but novice inspector on one, not too bad.
No, definitely not bad. And again, this is a very interesting matchup because I think specifically the Dimir deck can play a very aggressive role in a lot of matchups because it can come in under with its disruption and has just a lot of really nice, cheap interaction. But when you're going against a Boros deck, you kind of can't be the aggro against it. So it's gonna be interesting to see how this match ends up playing out.
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, it may. You always want to have that gleeful demolition in hand so that your second turn you can make all those goblins, you can start getting in and things like that. But when you're playing against a mirror, you can almost always expect to see a bat on two.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
so,
and speaking of the gleeful demolitions,
yeah, exactly. So
you called
sometimes
it.
Yeah, it's just it pays to be lucky and draw into your lethal demolitions so you can't get them batted away.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's also a very helpful thing too when you are playing against a deck with the bat, right? You have to be very mindful of, what you have in your hand because it can go away at any time. So, sometimes the best place for a card is the top of your deck.
Yeah, it's definitely a safer option most of the time. Here, this is an interesting position because Caroline is drawing a lot of those, lovely one drops that are great for convoking, but not really getting the Knight Errant of Eos and getting that gleeful demolition now. Um, Not terrible since you have another novice inspector, but you really want to start getting your bigger things out, getting some haste, getting some pumps, because right now against the Preacher of the Schism, it's kind of just of a board stall.
Yeah, and this is where a lot of aggro players have to do some very, very complicated math. And we see the attack here. Sometimes you have to go, okay, if I attack and lose a creature every turn for the next couple turns, is that still lethal? Is that still worth the trade off? And we saw that here. Yes, it was.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a little in order to gain a lot. Unfortunately, playing into an Aclazotz, you're definitely just on the back foot now because if you attack into it, the offset of life gain is not great. So gonna do the adventure side of the recruiter and hopefully be able to play it in the frontliner out next turn. Could really use some sort of answer for the Aclazotz. I need to look at Caroline's deck, but right now a case would be great or any piece of removal to get Aclazotz off the board.
Yeah, and even if there is removal drawn, we know at least that Amy has an Urtai in hand to potentially stop any big threats that might jeopardize this game.
Yeah, yeah. Caroline, doesn't know that, but
Yeah.
that's the privilege we have of being
Uh-huh.
here.
Well, but what Caroline does know, right, is that my kind of mid-range control opponent has a lot of mana up and a lot of cards in hand. So this Urtai might not have been 100% seen, but maybe like a make disappear or something. Oh,
Except there is the one Cavern of Souls, so
yes.
that's why some of the other answers could be, taken care of, but the recruiter, safe and sound. Oh my gosh! I didn't do
Wow.
the math.
No, no, yeah, yeah. I didn't do the math either. I honestly, I went to go hover over that Cavern of Souls and didn't see any human pop up, so I completely forgot about that being a possibility of making the recruiter uncounterable. So that was wonderful, and Caroline played around that out perfectly.
Yeah, no, to be fair, Caroline got us all because Amy did try to tie it, and we were sitting there thinking, yeah, that's
Yeah,
unfortunate for Caroline, but no, it wasn't. That was
no, it
just
was,
great
yeah.
for Caroline. All right, I see Caroline hovering over Krinko, trying to decide whether or not to bring him in. Looks like he's still staying in the sideboard for now.
Hmm. Yeah, and this is a very interesting type of sideboarding option too, because when you're sideboard as the aggro deck, right, there are a lot of card. I mean, you have 15 cards that you can potentially bring in, right? But every card you bring in tends to dilute your aggro plan. So it does come at a cost, and you have to figure out the really right percentage of making your deck better against this specific deck without ruining your own game plan.
Absolutely. Well, this seems like a pretty strong opener from Caroline. Both colors, turn ones, turns two, some removal. Amy, not a bad start for Amy either. A Tidebinder removal and a Shouldered in hand. and enough mana to play all of them.
Yes, very, very wonderful.
All right, so we see
And
Nonsense Spectre coming out.
and this is where the destroy evil in the sideboard, is going to be relevant with the 4th turn Shieldred. Being able to kill these really, really problematic creatures for you is going to be incredibly helpful.
Absolutely. Interesting here that the Warden of the Inner Sky comes out. We see that Caroline has a Gleeful Demolition, and so it looks like trying to get maybe 2 counters on the Warden before
Yeah, 2
stacking.
activations.
Yeah, like that. Fortunately, the Warden will be I'm not gonna finish what I was gonna say. Will be go for the throat,
Yeah.
target debate, but, not a bad beginning for Caroline. Right, Darren Epicure coming out, going to make a blood. Uh, Caroline, I believe, is just gonna hold those resolute reinforcements.
And this Tishana's Tidebinder is of like kind of it seems like a lot of times you want to get the counter aspect of the Tidebinder out because it feels like you're wasting the enters the battlefield trigger, but sometimes the best use for that creature is to kill your opponent's creature. And you don't need to, or you shouldn't necessarily wait to try and get the value out of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sometimes, especially when you're playing against these extremely aggressive decks, just the preservation of life is worthwhile. So, you know, that was, unfortunate that Caroline did have the case to take care of it afterwards and it didn't get its secondary usage, but it did take care of at least one of Caroline's attackers.
Hmm.
Going to loot away the Myrics. Probably searching for okay, a war leader's call, not a bad pickup. Another anthem. And let's see, 2, 4, 6. I think this is just gonna be game because even if you cut down, it's still not enough.
Yes, it was the Boros aggro deck did its thing and just came out swinging, and that's all it takes sometimes.
That that do be how aggro goes most of the time. You either I love aggro decks because you either win fast or lose fast.
Hmm. 100%.
But congratulations to both players. It is an extreme honor to make it this far. The VML is a very difficult league to play in, and making the top 32 is a big, you know, it's a big, what's the word am I looking for?
Accomplishment.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so
Of
much.
course. That's
And
why I'm here.
appreciate it. And congratulations to Caroline for making it to the top 16. We will probably see you again soon on coverage in one of the upcoming weeks. All right. Well, let's roll into our next game for the evening, see what players are coming up. All right. We have Renz on Golgari Midrange. This deck, I am a big old Golgari girly. How do you feel about Golgari, Steve?
Um, I love Golgari because there's what is the 3/2 adventure creature
Oh,
that
Mosswood
draws.
Dread Knight.
Yeah. So that is a card I will always play wrong by adventuring it first on turn 2 instead of casting as a creature, which is almost always the correct thing. But I like getting value out of my cards, even if it means I lose. And that's why I love the deck so much. Because there's
I
so many options, and there's always like one that's so much better than the others, but you have to find it.
I am right there with you. I like value. I like discounts. I like extra cards. So
Exactly.
I am also all in on drawing the card and then playing it out because it's just wasted value in my eyes.
No,
I may be
a
wrong.
100%. It would not have adventure if you weren't supposed to use it.
Thank you. I'm happy someone gets me.
Mhm.
Now we can see, Ren's their opponent is Okay. Uh, the opponent, I remember now, was it's a little bit of a mystery this week. I know it's Anna Jane MTG, but I was not able to get any information. They're just gonna be a mystery. I do know their deck, however.
Is Four Color Legends, is that it?
Yes. So she is on four color legends. So we can just go into our next game.
Laser Lollipop is such a great username.
Truly. It makes me smile every time I see it. Alrighty. Okay, not a bad start. I I really like the Caustic Bronco. I feel like I have never really gotten a lot of value off of saddling it though. Every time I've wanted to saddle, it just seemed more impressive to just attack with my 3 power creature.
Yeah, going it's going to be a very interesting matchup here because I'm not even sure how it's going to line up. The Golgari deck has a lot of interaction against the Four Color Legends deck. So I don't know if the damage from the Bronco will and the otherwise saddled creature would be worth it rather than just flipping over because there aren't one of the things that makes Bronco good is when you have a lot of high value cards when you saddle it. But here it seems like the Golgari deck stops at 5, and I think as opposed to some of the Golgari decks where it has the legendary enchantment or the enchantment with adventure, the virtue of something,
Mhm.
which is a really nice swing with the Caustic Bronco.
Oh, absolutely. The only bad part is if you aren't saddled and you swing and
Yeah,
you do
if
the
you
damage to
aren't,
yourself, you're like,
you know,
"Ooh, ooh, mistakes." But, that happens sometimes, Sometimes you just gotta go for it, get that damage, get that card, and,
exactly.
you take those beats.
Mhm.
Alright. Looks like a little bit of a slow start. I think Ren's right now just waiting to try to bait out, maybe a slow Gurk so that they can go for the throat it before putting any, threats on the board.
Exactly. It seems like Renz is really, really prioritizing the disruption aspect of this instead of the potential card advantage or damage that would come from the Bronco.
Absolutely. And it looks like it's paying off for them right there. Okay.
And now we have double the fun.
Yeah, double Bronco, double Snorson. Are we looking for Phyrexian? No? Yes.
Okay. So that I believe is good with Shieldred and Glissa. I don't know if there are any other Phyrexians in the deck, but both of those are very important cards to get resolved and not have to worry about
Absolutely.
counter magic.
I'm not sure if Anna's deck plays too much counter magic. I
Yeah,
think there's
I
an
think it might be the
Urtai.
Urtai, yes, and as
Yeah.
we saw before, the cavern with the Urtai, you know, Urtai's a
Yeah.
little upset about that cavern existing, so
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you still get a 3/2.
exactly. I mean, or you could also just destroy the creature, right?
Yeah.
Uh, that Urtai wasn't as effective in the last match because the enters the battlefield ability still triggers, where it can kill the Shieldred and Glissa, so it
Mhm.
doesn't need to counter it.
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that Urtai has that kind of duality is really, really nice. You just
Mhm.
makes it a little bit difficult sometimes when it's a spell and those spells are not counterable and you know
Exactly.
all right, NT coming down. I'll be honest, when NT first came out, I did not see the appeal of having to like loot away something to get a counter. But as I've, watched a lot of VML matches, I have Inti's really grown on me. I've started
Oh,
to
yeah.
see the appeal and, you know, I now am an Inti believer.
Oh, yeah, and I am a huge NT believer. NT is a beautiful, beautiful Magic card.
And
And
good.
yeah, and very and good. Yes, yes, yes. That is also true. Now, one thing here that I think is interesting, uh, Renz has a main deck Tranquil Frillback and another one in the sideboard. But Tranquil Frillback is a card that can interact with graveyards and artifacts, and that is something you kind of want against the four color legend deck because you need to deal with the graveyard, need to deal with the relic. And so that is something I think Renz is like, I really need to draw this. I really want to. And hopefully at off of these Broncos, they can.
Yeah. Do you think it was potentially a metagame, consideration for Renz, having added that in just to, I'm not sure what Anna played a lot this season, but I would assume Renz maybe kinda considered that Legends was a very popular deck over the course of the season and maybe put it in just to, hedge her bets against potentially
Yeah, that
playing.
definitely could have been a a consideration because Frillback isn't necessarily the you know, best main deck card. It just does a lot of things in a very uh cool and unique way that is very good against certain decks. And if you think, oh, there's going to be a lot of graveyard decks, which Slowgurk and this four color legend decks are, it would be a good choice. Just
Yeah.
like this graveyard trespasser was drawn as another way to interact with the graveyard. So the Golgari deck has a lot of really cool ways to, you know, work here.
Yeah, and also just talking about graveyard recursion, it's also a good bet against any of the team or analyst decks. All those lands
Exactly.
recurring. I
Mhm.
think, yeah, Ren's definitely might have metagamed a little bit, expecting to either see maybe some of these legends decks or team or analyst. And I think that was a pretty smart move on her part.
Absolutely. And we also see here with the hostile investigator, the way to interact not only with the creatures on board with removal or with the graveyard with, your trespasser or frillback, investigator also attacks the hand, right? And so this Golgari midrange deck just is doing a lot of things to help make the combo less likely to go off and for the slow Gurk player to develop that massive value.
Ooh, I am very excited to see this attack here and to see what is on top of Renz's deck.
Well, I'm sorry that you were excited.
There's still one Bronco.
That could potentially attack, yes.
Yeah, it would be a little bit of a suicide mission into that big old Slowgurk, but there's a possibility.
I mean, hey, sometimes and this is a card, right? And if you really value that graveyard interaction, like maybe it's, oh, I need another chance to draw a card. That could be something. And the Boseiju here on the cottage is also a way to be proactive. Anna's being proactive against more graveyard removal because the cottage on attack can exile the cards from graveyard. So this is where Anna's going, you know what? I see this as a potential threat. Let me use my mana while I can, pump up my Slowgurk, and get them all back for more fun next turn.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the cottage as a creature. I love that it gives you foods. I love that it does so much stuff. I think it's one of my favorite creature lands. That and obviously Restless Anchorage that we've been seeing in many of the Esper Azorius decks. Um, I think both of those were great pickups in LCI.
Absolutely.
Right, Slow Gurk is back on the board. And we see double Otawara and the Boseiju back in hand. This I think Renz has a good board state, but this is gonna be really tricky with all of the bounce.
Yes. So one of the reasons for playing the Slogurk decks, be it in whatever form it is that it is incredibly difficult to navigate the games, even with all the information revealed. Renz knows that Anna has 2 Otawara and a Boseiju, but trying to calculate how much everything costs and what you can respond with and everything is so unfathomably complicated. So, and that's always when you have a complicated deck to play against, it always will benefit you.
Yeah, it if I'm doing my math correct, you Anna Jane can bounce Slogurk and play Boseiju, but that's not enough counters to just pop. If Anna plays the Otawara on Slogurk, it would save the Slogurk, but you're not getting the counters, you're not getting
Mhm.
the lands back to hand, and I don't think there's a way that she can accumulate enough counters to just pop Slogurk back to hand without the go for the throat actually killing it. So this is a tricky situation for I think both players here.
Exactly. There's also the Plaza of Heroes, which can be activated, which I think it still has the opportunity right now. Oh well, not anymore. Well,
Mhm.
now tapping out. But so the double Ottawa bounce is very, very powerful in it here. One of the cool interactions and why Hostile Investigator is a really, really good card in this format right now is the channel lands will trigger the investigator for you. Oh, and looks like we do get all 3 activations of those.
That's okay. I miscounted. Oh, it's so hard to count, your
Mhm.
lands plus the relic plus
Yeah,
okay.
and plus it's only 3, 3, and 1 with the legend. Yeah, there's just a lot of math to have to do very, very quickly.
Yeah, so Slogurk will come back to hand and we'll get more lands back. Yeah. It does leave Anna empty on her side of the board, though. So even though the hostile investigator will be coming back, um, we still have the Mosswood Dread Knight that can just attack in. And the hostile investigator can't be oh no, can be played out and will cause Anna to have to discard.
Mhm. And this is also one of the cool aspects of the hostile investigator because now, I mean, cool as in making your opponent discard, I think is cool. But you
I
but
do too.
now you also get rid of a very important land from Anna, and now they are less likely to be able to get those 3 counters as effectively onto the Slogurk as before.
Yeah, exactly. As we just witnessed, those 3 lands, um, were able to basically kind of combo off with bounce, bounce, destroy something, and, roll the Slogurk, get the Slogurk back, and just the repeated recursion. And if that went on for a few more turns, Renz would be in a lot of trouble.
Mhm.
Ooh, the Graveyard Trespasser potentially coming out and exiling some of these lands out of Anna's graveyard. Maybe.
And yeah, potentially. And one of the good things about Graveyard Trespasser here is that the ward ability is very, very relevant in how it's going to make it much harder to get rid of uh, when all the cards in Anna's hand is very, very valuable.
Here, do you take the Boseiju? I
I
would
would
be
take it because I think getting rid of the lands and trying to make sure that the Slogurk doesn't always have, isn't always returning its full amount is a
mhm.
very, very, very important part of this matchup.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree with you. It Yeah, I think it would be the Boseiju, the next turn taking the other Slogurk, and then, Indy's my last pick for that one.
Exactly. And so Renz also drew a bitter triumph here, which is kind of very similar to the go for the throat that was drawn and used the previous turn. But now, after seeing what happened last turn, is like, maybe I don't need to use it right now
Yeah.
because the same thing might happen again. And maybe it's better to potentially wait or not. It's just a very, very, there are a lot of very intricate decisions on what, how you want to navigate the next couple of turns and what type of pressure you want to put on Anna.
Yeah, I completely agree with you because it looks like we have double Odawaras. I think, again, it's so hard to do this math. Oh, actually, we're going to see a Takanuma this time.
Yeah, and Takanuma's very, very good here. And now it's also like maybe we should have removed the creature with the Graveyard Trespasser. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's always
No,
20/20.
exactly. You
With the
never know.
knowledge, yeah, the knowledge we had, the Boseiju's better, but now it's just like, "Ooh, maybe it was
Hmm.
creatures." The plaza getting activated here. Slogurk will be hexproof. So, unfortunately, that hostile investigator will die to Slogurk, but that's okay. What's better than first hostile investigator? The second one.
Exactly.
That
And
is,
yeah, this, no, go on.
I was gonna say that is a large and ever growing Slogurk, though.
Yes. And does Slogurk have trample naturally?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So this is a very difficult spot to be in if you are Renz, because now you have to decide how much you want to potentially triple block. Is that even worth it, knowing your opponent has an Atawara? But if you don't deal with the Slogurk now, it only will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so you just are constantly feeling like you're between, you know, two really, really bad decisions, and none of them seem good for you.
Yeah. Oh, especially with that's another plaza of heroes. So the Slogurk combo is starting to pop off, which is not great. That cut down cannot hit the Slogurk. It can hit the Inti, but we do see that there's, the Odawara in hand.
There's a lot.
There's not it's not a great position to be in right now. It's really
Yes.
difficult.
And Renz has a lot of options here. There are tons of clues that you can crack to draw and see if the top of your deck will help you out of this situation. There's the opportunity to maybe attack with the Moss Bridge or the Mosswood Dreadnought, and maybe it's worth it to crew the Bronco and attack and see what you draw, and maybe have your opponent lose a lot of life. There's just so many decisions here. And that's what makes the Golgari deck really, really fun to play, but also very, very difficult to play.
Yeah, absolutely. This is an interesting position to be in because it looks like Renz may attack with the Bronco and see what she's able to get off the top. That cut down is it's not the greatest right now. It's hard
It's
because
not the greatest because also the Enti could be saved for with the Plaza as well.
Mhm,
So it only has the one target because you really want it to be able to kill the Slogurk here, but also it doesn't even necessarily do anything.
mhm. We get the Odawara bouncing the Inti back to hand. I'm trying to see. I think Anna can float 2 mana from the Inti and Slogurk. What does that do for Anna?
That's a good question.
Hmm. Well, that Slogurk is large enough to just also bounce back to hand, so that's
Yeah.
oof. This is a tough position for both players. This is a tough position for me,
Yes, yes,
and I'm not even playing.
there's a lot of things to do here. And so Renz attacked here, and I think part of it was I'm gonna either remove an Atawara or you return your Slowgurk to get him back because I cannot keep on dealing with this turn after turn. Now
I think the
the
scary
shields are
position
kind of down.
yeah, I was gonna say the
Yeah.
scary position here is if Anna has any removal, any bounce, you're just dead, and we
Yep.
that's exactly what happened. Alright, so going into game 2, if I'm Renz, are you bringing in that second Tranquil Frill back and maybe the hearses?
Yeah, I definitely want more graveyard interaction because one of the you are kind of a better mid-range deck than the 4-color Legends deck, specifically when the Slowgurk isn't having the recurring combo aspect. So I think I would highly, highly value any graveyard interaction.
Yeah, I agree. I almost what do you think about duresses in this matchup? The discard, if a Slogurk's already on board, not the greatest. Cut downs also not the best because Slogurk itself is a 3/3.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just very, very tricky. I think because you also have to look at what you want to take out of your own deck here and what you think your opponent is bringing in. Because I don't know if the Slogurk decks, if their game plan really, really changes from game 1 to game 2 and game 3. I think it's mostly just a different suit of legendaries, but mainly they're just trying to get a lot of value with this Slogurk. So I would just really prioritize cards that directly kill Slogurk, like your Bitter Triumphs and your Go for the Throats, and ways to interact with the graveyard.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Would you bring in maybe more graveyard trespassers as well?
So it looks like Renz sided those out from the main deck, which I think, you know, if you don't plan on attacking with the Graveyard Trespasser, m- exiling only one card isn't necessarily that big of a deal in the grand scheme of the Slowgurk deck's plan. And so Hearse and Tranquil Frillback might just be a much better consideration.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, here goes game 2. That's an interesting starter. I like the Restless Cottage because I love that and the Cavernous Souls. The two cut downs, I think that's great if we get, those inties. And I think Anna's also playing Ronas in
Yeah,
her deck.
there's Enti, Rona, I think Tiny Bones,
Mm.
and also is it Honest Rustin or Handsome Rustin? I legitimately don't know.
It is honest, but he can also be handsome.
Exactly. Maybe that's just my internal monologue speaking, and I apologize. Um, so there are a couple of cheaper legends that cut down can kill, and that's one of the reasons to keep it is to interact with the early things if your opponent doesn't have Slowgurk. But we also have Jace here, which is a little problematic.
I really like the inclusion of Jace and the self mill. I feel like a lot of the times I've been seeing Jace in this current metagame, it's been the just opponent mill out strategy, which is highly effective. But I haven't seen him in self mill too often. But this is the perfect deck for that.
Hmm.
All right, the Relic of Legends. Renz does have the answer in hand. Terra Sunder will take it out, so I don't think it's gonna stick around for long.
No, and this is going to be really, really good for Renz. Again, I don't know how she will necessarily navigate the hand. It might change from what she draws, but being able to then also kill the Jace with your cottage if you want to tap out is going to be really, really good to get that out of the way, to exile an important card from the graveyard, and then you make your opponent have to have stuff.
Yeah. That's my favorite when my opponent has to have stuff, and if they don't, they're in trouble.
Exactly. Oh, I was like, I saw the attack at not Jace, and I was like, okay, I respect it.
I like this. I like getting that Boseiju out. If that
Mhm.
Boseiju comes to hand, goodbye cottage. So I think
Exactly.
that is absolutely the right choice there. Now, does Anna have second Boseiju?
Right? And it's very, very possible that Anna does.
All right. So we have a second Cavern of Souls in hand. I did not see what Renz named. I'm guessing Phyrexian. That just seems to make sense. Do you
Yeah.
think with second cavern it's going to be horse?
That I just think that's funny. Like, oh, what is this cavern naming? Horse, and like,
Yeah.
right below it, it's God, then horse. I like, okay, magic.
I one thing about Magic that I love is how you can have a horse and a god in the same deck.
Exactly. It's just incredible.
Yep. It's even better. This isn't even universes beyond.
Exactly. All right, so the Takanuma, and there's only the Jace in the graveyard right now, I think.
Well, see, yep. I was
Okay.
gonna say potentially the mill could have gotten something, but just Jace. Oh, there's our handsome man.
Exa exactly.
Cut down is able to target. It is 5 or less, and Honest Rutstein is right at 5. But it's still got the value from the or from the Honest Rutstein entering the battlefield and going to get the slow Gurk back to hand. And also,
Mhm.
why is slow Gurk such a tongue twister?
Ugh, tell me.
All right. Slogurk will hit the battlefield. We know that Renz has the go for the throat, and now that Anna is tapped out, um, Renz can safely remove it. It's just a matter of, you know, being able to keep it out of the graveyard.
Mhm.
So the Restless Cottage can do it. I just one, two, three, four. Renz would just need one more mana to be able to go for the throat and activate the cottage.
Yes.
Right. So we didn't get the mana, but what does Glissa do for us here?
It allows you to saddle the Bronco, I think.
Ye-
Um, it seems like you still are going to want to go for the slow Gurk, but, oh, okay.
I do like the idea of attacking with the cottage and at least removing some of the lands that the Slogurk could get back. The Takanumas being great
Mhm.
hits there. Fortunately, that cut down is kind of a dead card in hand.
For now.
Yeah, yeah, for now.
Yeah. I mean, you could always target your own Bronco if you really wanted to.
Yeah, the snores never safe.
Exactly.
The Rona, however, great target for the cut down.
Yeah, beautiful. Better target than our own, horse,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah. I'm glad my suggestion was not taken.
The snores never safe.
Yeah.
Right.
And is the Bronco an attack trigger?
I believe
Or
so because you have to saddle it, and if you saddle it, that doesn't do anything. You have to saddle and attack in order to do the
okay,
card.
because the Jace if the Jace does go for a plus here, you will still get the value from the Bronco if you attack.
Mm-hmm.
But if Jace is gonna mill yourself, then that doesn't matter.
All right. We get 2 Slogurk triggers off the self mill. And it looks like there is 1 mana still available to Anna. With all these channel lands, I believe that's a Ziatora's Proving Ground?
I
Maybe?
believe so.
All right. So that would open up a Boseiju. Cannot do a Otawara, but yeah, I don't think a Boseiju or a Takanuma, I think. No,
Yeah.
not Tak
The Takanuma, if it's used now, not after the Rona is dead, though.
yeah. Speaking of Takanuma.
Right? You heard. I heard you talking about me.
All right. So here, Renz could play Takanuma out as a land, do the go for the throat, activate the cottage, exile the Slogurk, but she has to be very careful because if there is that Boseiju, that could destroy the cottage, it could bounce the Slogurk. So it's a kind of tricky situation to be in of making Anna have it or not.
Yes.
I
And we
do
will see what happens here. But go on.
I was gonna say I do like the move of playing the go for the throat now and forcing Anna to basically move on it before deciding whether or not to play the Takanuma out. And as I predicted, the Boseiju was in hand. Going to
Hmm.
float a mana. All right. Looks like one, two, three, only 4 basics left in Renz's deck. All right. With an empty board, I believe you just go for the Jace attack here with the Snorse. Uh,
I Yes. I would. That's what I would do.
yeah.
After you
Play the
saddle.
play the Glissa, saddle, and then go for the Jace attack. Experts here.
Yeah. Because
That
also Anna does not a big difference between this game and last game is Anna doesn't have the relic on the battlefield, and
Mhm.
the relic of legends gives the legends player a surprising amount of mana. And while Anna is returning lands and playing lands and doing all sorts of cool stuff, there is a very huge constraint on mana in this game, which is going to greatly affect how to navigate all this stuff moving forward.
No, absolutely. That Terra Sunder sideboard end was, I think, very pivotal in this game because getting that Relic of
Absolutely.
Legends off the board early really set Anna back. And I want to say one of the early mills on Anna's side milled a second Relic of Legends. So,
Hmm. And the Glissa is also a very surprisingly good card against Slogurk because it doesn't matter how big that ooze gets, Glissa will kill it.
yes, absolutely. I won't lie. My favorite 2 keywords that you can put on a single creature are Death Touch and First Strike. Because it's so hard. Like
Hmm.
you can't block. And you have to have
Hmm.
indestructible or you just can't block. And if Glissa makes uh that connection, it's just so much worse. So she's only upside, my queen, my love.
Absolutely. And this is also a very interesting decision, I think, for Renz here. I don't know what Anna might do. Okay, Anna's gonna go for the throat, the Glissa. So there we go. But I was gonna wonder where the Gix commands counters were gonna go on, but now they're definitely gonna go on the Bronco, so that doesn't necessarily matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is important for Renz here because the slow Gurk, I mean, maybe magic will happen, right? But the slow Gurk seems like it will be killed this turn. It's not going to get returned. It's not going to return anything. It is going to go to the graveyard, and then Renz can breathe.
Yes, absolutely. I I think Renz was debating there whether or not to cycle the or to channel the Takanuma, but I think Renz potentially wants to get Glissa back, so not
Yes.
wanting to do it right then and there. I do think it was an interesting timing for Anna to activate the Gix's command, or to do the go for the throat before the Gix's command counters were placed.
Yeah, there could have been it was maybe a little more information than you thought. Or if you don't think it's going to change anything, then do it now and keep your clock. Because also this match has been going on for a really long time. So
True.
maybe that is also a consideration. Sometimes you're just like, you know what? I might need to do this play now because these 10 or 20 seconds are worth it in the long run.
Absolutely. The pickup of the Tranquil Frill back here, I think, is huge. It's going to be an interesting timing piece, though, because all of those lands that we see in Anna's hand. So I love that the Tranquil Frill back has made an appearance. I think it's going to be an interesting time seeing it played out and seeing how things end up shaking out once it does hit the battlefield.
Yes. Because one of the things too about the frillback and slowgurk, right? Even if you right, now it go for the throat. It just added a billion different things to potentially do and consider. Uh
Yeah. Oh, we just got the
Timer for laser
yep.
lollipop. So 12 minutes left. Anna has not reached that yet. But yeah, so now there is, do I go to exile the graveyard and see what Anna does in response? And then if Anna tries to return, you can kill the go for the throat, or do you just go for the throat right away? There's just so many things to consider.
Yeah, both of these decks are so complex. Obviously, the
Yes.
Slogurk deck is what I think prompts a lot of these choices, but
Yeah.
wow, it's it is not an easy time navigating this matchup.
Yes. Because yeah, Renz is trying to be like, okay, I know four of the cards in the hand. Could the other ones be lands that are important? Could it be, an Urtai? There are just so many different things it can be. And you want to try and play around everything while not just not doing anything because you're so afraid of everything.
Yeah, I think that is one unique aspect about the four color legends deck is just how many like one or two ofs tend to be in those decks, which makes, playing around those decks so much more difficult. Um
Exactly.
like especially when you're playing some of like, especially the Golgari list that has a lot of 3 and 4 ofs, you can kind of predict a little bit better and have more heads up plays. Whereas with 4 color and 5 color legends, you're like, "Well, I just have to force it and hope for the best sometimes."
Exactly.
Oh, double Boseiju. Okay. I think Renz is actually getting really close to running out of basics in her deck.
Oh yeah, and this is where if I were Renz, I'd be very, very sad. It's like, I'm not a greedy four color deck like you. Why am I the one running out of basics?
Oh, yeah, Takanuma getting a creature back, Slogurt can bounce, get a couple lands back. This is getting exiling the graveyard is going to be very good here still, but oh, not bouncing the Slogurk.
Yeah. So the Slowgurk wasn't bounced, I assume, because if Anna bounces it, you can saddle the Bronco, and your opponent's at 4. And so if you attack with the Bronco and you reveal something that's 4 or less, you will lose the game.
That okay, not quite, but very, very close.
Very, very close.
Honestly, at this point, with one non-summoning, well, no, just kidding. There's 3 Broncos.
Huh.
Wow. Oh, I didn't even know that was a card.
So that was Malicious Eclipse. All creatures get -2/-2 on end of turn. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. And normally that would kill all the Broncos, but because it was pumped from the Gix, that didn't happen.
Yeah. So here, do you just saddle up and I mean, either way, either way.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so we are getting a game 3. Those have been a heck of a 2 first games, and I know that Renz is getting a little low on time. So this last game, I'm very curious if it's going to come down to time or if we're going to get a grand finale.
Right. I think it might be a little bit of both. I think the time will definitely be playing a factor. It seems like these post sideboard games are a little more intricate and require a lot more interaction and decision making. So I think Renz is going to be pressured to act quickly, but I think it's still going to be a very back and forth game.
All right. So let's see. It looked like the dresses all came out. The fourth cut down came in.
Mhm. The duress here, most of your opponent's cards have been creatures and lands, and the duress doesn't do anything particularly great against those. Like we saw the one sideboard card, Malicious Eclipse, and it can also get maybe Jace or Invasion of Fiora, which we saw get milled. But for the most part, the cards you want to deal with are the lands in the graveyard or the creatures, and duress doesn't do either.
Mhm. All right. Let's see what our opening hand looks like. Maybe. Okay, that looks like a good starter to me. What is it? Cottage on 1. Would you would you do the greedy move and play the adventure side of Dread Knight on 2?
I mean, so on two, I would. I, I mean, I would do the adventure thing because I like being wrong. I think though here it would probably be worth it to do the 3/2 creature early on to apply that pressure to the opponent, just because the the damage can the 3/2 body is really really huge if your opponent doesn't have slow Gurk.
Yeah. Yeah, that getting that pressure in is very, I think, pivotal in these games. Um, yeah.
And if the Mosswood Dread Knight does die, then you have the time to get the card advantage. And if it dies, it's already trading 1-for-1, so you don't necessarily need to, you know.
That is one of my favorite things about it is that if it dies, it just keeps coming back.
Mhm. So the first turn, we saw Renz hesitate on whether or not to play the cottage turn 1 or another untapped land, and Renz decided to play the cottage, which meant they couldn't cut down the Rona on turn 2, which kind of set back her mana a little bit. And if she had played it on turn 1 untapped, she would have been able to do the knight on turn 2.
Oh, that was very interesting. Anna missed their third land drop.
Yeah, so if you are Laser Lollipop, you are currently very, very happy. as we all are when our opponents miss their third land drop.
Yes, I will admit, I love when that happens for me.
Right, exactly. Now it does make the Liliana plus a little. Liliana plus oneing is probably at its worst against a Slogurk deck that has 7 cards in hand. So Anna might not be so upset about that, but is probably going to be very upset with this unlicensed hearse.
Yes, getting this hearse out early is so strong for Renz, starting to get that graveyard exile going, and basically probably going to be able to just keep up with Anna's mills and removing any problematic lands that might hit the graveyard, any problematic creatures. I didn't even see the Bonnie Paul, but that's in there too.
Hmm. And so one thing too, from Anna's perspective, it may have been that she was really, really relying on that Rona to filter to
Mhm.
get some type of land, because we also know Anna doesn't have green mana right now. It's the red for Inti and the blue and black, but no green. So there is no Slogurk here. There is no handsome Rustine,
Yeah,
which are both very, very powerful things. But sadly, it looks like another missed land drop in a deck that has a lot of lands.
yeah, that's very true. All right, that hearse is growing ever larger. That is one nice thing about the Liliana upticks is that every time you uptick the Liliana, you're feeding your hearse. Make sure to
Hmm.
feed your hearses, chat.
Exactly.
Right. I'm curious to see if Renz is going to. I almost said saddle. Is going to saddle the hearse. No, is going to crew the hearse here and start attacking, or just going to continue to use it as a exile effect,
Hmm.
and I think at this point, I'm still just exiling and getting it with my Dread Knight. Because right now, when it's only 1 more damage, it doesn't seem worth it, but once that hearse gets to 6, 8, more, I think then it would be definitely worthwhile to start attacking in with it.
Exactly. And this Nissa is going to be hugely problematic because now Anna has to deal with not only coming back from a mana disadvantage, but your opponent has a lot of interaction, a lot of threats. It is looking not like game one for Anna.
Yeah, and, oh, unfortunately, Anna does get the green mana, but it is a tapped land, and Renz has finally crossed that threshold of being able to just play whatever card she draws, upticking the Liliana, not having to worry about self-discard, so it's unfortunately looking really rough for Anna this game. We do see the Glissa come in, which is not meaningless. It helps prevent, some of these.
Liliana from upticking.
Yes, that as well. Yeah, that yeah,
And it might just be lethal here, yes.
yeah. Good games to both of our players. Those were extremely hard fought. It Congratulations to Renz. That was very, very close, and we got to see both decks do what they do best. The Slogurk deck, it gurked, and the Mosswood Dread Knight drew some cards, and the Broncos, they sure saddled up.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Renz, we'll see you in the top 16. I'm looking forward to seeing more of what you bring. And Anna, it's a major accomplishment. So great job making it to the top 32. Are you ready for game number 3, Steve?
I mean, I was born ready.
All right.
So,
Well, I think we just roll right in. We have Reavh on mono red aggro. We talked a little bit about aggro decks earlier. I personally love mono red because whether I win or lose, the game's over fast.
yeah, no, that is I love looking at it that way. Yeah, it's nice and quick. and maybe we'll be shorter than our last match.
Maybe. You never know.
You never know.
I do want to say I loved Reeve's answer to who's your favorite planeswalker. She said, Chandra, if your problems can't be solved with fire, you're just not using enough of it. And I love that mindset.
Exactly. I can't publicly say that that is also my mindset, but I kind of very much agree. So,
Uh,
cheers.
in a hypothetical situation, yes.
Exactly. Fire, you're just not using enough of it is something, yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, let's see who Reeve's opponent is this week. We have the one, the only Mythic Mikaela, and she is on Domain Ramp. When I was importing these decks, making these slides, I had to do some math. I was like, is Mikaela running more than 60 a 60 card main board? And yeah, she sure is. She definitely made my formatting on this deck pick a little funky, but I forgive her.
It's okay. We all forgive.
And I do I do wanna say that her answer to the favorite planeswalker, I think this was a special treat just for me. She said, "Can we pretend Judith is a planeswalker and say Weird Judith?" Um,
Weird. Yep.
yeah, it's me. I am Weird Judith, so thank you, Mikaela. I appreciate you putting that in there. Alrighty. Well, I would love to see how the domain ramp versus mono red matchup, ends up kind of coming together because I feel like kind of like what I said earlier, mono red can either get real fast and under domain ramp and take them out, or if you start getting into mid to late game, the domain ramp decks tend to just kind of run away with it. Has that been your
Yeah.
experience, Steve?
Yeah, like one resolved Archangel of Wrath can just completely be like, all right, well, let's go to the next game. So
Yeah,
the first couple turns are going to be incredibly important here.
absolutely. Well, let's see if we see any of those archangels or if they get lost. We won't see them get lost. There's no white in Reeves' deck.
I mean, unless Mikaela get lost her own.
True. It is always a possibility, just not a
I
high
mean,
one.
stranger things have happened.
All right, this looks like a pretty solid opener for Michaela. The bindings aren't going to be too cheap, but the herd migration can help go get a fourth color, so it's something. I like the
Yeah.
idea of holding the herd migration back there to silo it away and go get a basic instead of playing the
Mhm.
beanstalk out there.
And it was the mono red deck would have really liked to have a Kamano or Monastery Swift Spear on turn one because not having one drop just sets it doesn't necessarily set you back, but you leave off so much potential damage against the five colored domain deck where you need to end the game as quickly as possible. So Michaela definitely was very thankful that that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, depending on my matchup, I don't mind too much having a play with fire on one, but in this one where there is life gain is a considerable um, you know, part of the deck, you don't want to leave any damage, behind.
Mhm. And Reavh also has the what is the forge or brass forge, which is being cast right here, and that is normally or theoretically a good card against the more controlly matchups. However, it takes a long time for it to become a significant threat, and by the time that happens, the leyline binding will just make it irrelevant.
Yeah.
So it is unfortunate that Mikaela has two of those for both forges potentially.
Yeah, and yeah, I love the Forge. Like you said, I love it against more controlly decks. It evades the board wipes, which we also see Michaela has plenty of, but those
Exactly.
leyline bindings, that's the perfect answer in Michaela's
Mhm.
deck. And having the beanstalk out, you binding for one, draw your cards. Michaela's got a pretty nasty start here.
Yeah, 100%. This is almost going perfectly for how all the cards lined up for Mikaela. Now it's not over for the mono red deck. There's still a lot of different ways to deal a lot of damage out of nowhere and have a and to come back from this position and win, but it's not going to be easy from this position.
Yeah, it's a very uphill battle at this point, and it's gonna be a challenge for Reavh. Looks like a lightning strike with the exile from Felden. That lightning strike plus the play with fire can take out the Archangel Wrath, so Reavh is at least answering Michaela's threats. Unfortunately, we do know that other Leyline Binding is in hand and able to take out that forge. Reavh did, however, draw the third forge though.
Oh wow.
I think at this point it may be a little late for it to really be effective, especially with how many cards Michaela's drawing.
Oh yeah.
But if Reef can get a few more mana, though, those are quite a few hasty creatures that can very quickly. Ooh, I spoke too soon.
Yeah, I mean, so Archangel Wrath is a very powerful angel in this matchup, but obviously Atraxa is a very powerful angel in any matchup. And Mono Red has the power of Archangel is that it can come out sooner than turn 7. But once Atraxa resolves, you are in a much worse position than you were before.
Yeah, it's Reeve still had to use two basically spells that you would typically want to use on face. You don't normally want to have to use them removing creatures, just to remove the Archangel. And for the Atraxa, they're you when you have to 2 for 1 yourself for a creature, it's never a great feeling.
Yeah, and specifically if the creature you're 2 for 1ing already drew your opponent 5 cards.
Yeah, it's not great. Not a great position. Looks like Michaela is debating whether or not to hardcast the herd migration. I think that's a pretty safe bet here. Making 5 3/3s, drawing a card. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. In this matchup, I think typically it's just temporary lockdowns. Those come in.
Yeah, that seems about right. I'm trying to figure out what you want to sideboard out.
I think I'd almost take out the Sunfalls because with a couple of temporary lockdowns and a couple depopulates, um, you really don't even need the Sunfalls. Um,
Yeah, the Sunfall seem maybe a little redundant and a little too expensive, but you also know that the opponent has potentially to bring in the Furnace Punisher, which is 3 mana, and that might be a card that you're very much worried about because that is continuous damage over time, and so maybe you want to keep in the Sunfall for that.
that's true. I miss Furnace Punisher. It's so nice when your opponent's playing quite a few colors and almost no basics.
Right? Yeah, I concur.
Ah, all right. Well, it looks like Michaela's still deciding what the last two cards to take out are. That's spelunking maybe a little slow.
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways to go. I know some people will even take out Atraxa because 7 mana is a lot, and you don't ever want more than like one of those in your hand. Some people might take out the again, as we brought up, the Sunfall because if your opponent has the Forge or stuff, it might just be a little too slow, or a 5 mana removal spell for one creature.
I was gonna
So,
say, would you? Oh, she Michaela's running back a 61 card special. I like it.
mhm.
I was gonna say, do you ever just take out some of those single target removal spells, like the Get Lost or the Long Goodbyes, just because sometimes it's better to try to go for the mass removal rather than the targeted removal?
Um, I think here probably not because your opponent has the show off creature,
Mhm.
which can be put into what is the ability called? I am complete plot. It can be plotted into the exile, and that is one of the ways that the mono red deck can deal a lot of damage out of nowhere. And if you don't have your instant speed removal up, you can die in an instant,
That
literally.
yeah, that's very, very true. Those or the, the monastery show-offs, no, the slick shot show-offs, that's probably one of my favorite recent additions to the mono red list. It's basically, I don't wanna say better prowess, but it's like the uneven prowess of double the power, no toughness.
Hmm.
We're gonna see double slick shots and monstrous rage. I think the slick shot with rage is probably my favorite little combination because of how much damage it pushes in one turn.
Yeah, it is a lot.
Fortunately, temporary lockdown is gonna come out and both of those slick shots are gonna take a breather.
So again, the Mikaela is at 6, and with one, what is that? Lightning blast bolt.
Yep, lightning bolt.
Uh, is basically at 3 life.
Yeah, this is
So
very scary because I don't think that topiary stomper cannot block. So you you play out your forge, you get a damage in, you 3 to face next turn. If it can't block next turn, you are in trouble. But Mikaela does have the leyline binding to at least buy herself a little bit of time. But this is a pretty scary position for her.
yeah, definitely. Now with the binding and the goodbye, you have the removal to get rid of both the things that your opponent have. However, what you're still at 5 life, and this is one of the times where Atraxa is maybe not as powerful in this matchup as the Archangel, because the Archangel could be on the battlefield and have gained you some life, and that would be much more important to stabilize here.
Absolutely. Mikaela deciding whether or not to binding now or to wait till Reeve's turn.
Because I think Michaela's going, maybe I also want a Topiary Stomper.
Mhm. There is the Punisher. Unfortunately, Mikaela does
Mm,
have just enough in order to make it so that she will not take the damage, but I do love that it showed up.
yep. So this is going to be a very interesting decision for Reavh, because Reavh, the ley line's going to come in, remove the Brask, and now Reavh can go, do I activate my, what is that, the Foundry
Yeah, the Misha's Foundry.
to deal the 2 damage, or do I use up more of my mana to play the Furnace? And attacking with the Foundry will be a lot better here because the long goodbye is going to be used. And then next turn, you might be able to punish her to deal the final damage to Mikaela.
Mhm. All right. The Topiary Stomper, that requires, is it 7 lands?
Hmm.
So Michaela still is one off from those Topiary Stompers being able to block or attack. Um, Unfortunately, Reeve did get another mana. Having the Foundry taken out hurts a bit, but she's getting building the mana back up. Bait well, not necessarily baiting out the leyline binding, but getting the leyline binding out is great. Michaela is still at a very dangerous life total. If one play with fire is drawn, it's just game over.
Yeah, or another lightning strike. So there are about probably like 7 outs in the deck that need to be drawn this turn.
Absolutely, because once that Atraxa gets one attack in, it's basically just game over at that point.
Yes.
Lithomantic Barrage. Oh, unfortunately, I don't think that does it. But,
I don't
it could actually remove the Atraxa. You play the Barrage and the Lightning Strike on Atraxa?
Oh, that will definitely be what if you want to live a turn, that's what you will want to do. But even by doing that, the Archangel of the Wrath is revealed in Mythic Mikaela's hand, and that would be lethal
Mhm.
during your next turn.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is
Sadly.
yeah, such a close game too, but just unfortunate draws. Mikaela having all the removal at the right time. Yeah, this was a wonderful game, but
Absolutely.
yeah, the writing is it's on the wall.
Yeah. Only if red could deal with enchantments, but sadly it cannot.
Yeah. Think Wizards will ever fix that?
Yeah, if you go into another color,
Ah, I guess that is one way to fix that.
or you just deal 20 damage before your opponent can cast an enchantment. Bam.
No, that is one way to play it.
I
And
mean, I
then
think. I don't know if that would work.
I don't know, we'll have to find out next week.
Yes.
Alright, we get the Archangel of Wrath kicked for the win. Congratulations, Mythic Mikaela, for moving on to the top 16, and thank you so much, Reavh. That was a wonderful, well-played game, and congratulations on making it to the top 32. That's quite an accomplishment. So great games to both players tonight. Alright, well, that was game 3 out of 4. Can you believe it? We're already onto our last game of the evening?
Oh, it has flown by, but that's what happens when you have fun.
Oh, it truly is. Well,
Mhm.
let's go right into it and see what our last game of the evening looks like. We've got Cora on Orzhov discard, that deck that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Do you want to, dive into some of the aspects of it since this is one of the more unique decks that we haven't really seen much this season?
Yeah, so this is an Orzhov discard deck, and we saw earlier in the evening Hostile Investigator do a lot of stuff. When Hostile Investigator enters the battlefield, your opponent discards a card, and then whenever an opponent discards a card, or a player discards a card, you investigate. That, along with Nurturing Pixie and Guardian of Girapur, Cora and Liliana. Cora is just gonna make sure your opponent has nothing in hand, and while you have all these clues where you can draw so much and overwhelm your opponent in card advantage, and it's gonna be hopefully a very beautiful thing to see.
I love it. I also am very excited for a 4 of Tithing Blade. I remember when I did my LCI pre-release and I just kept getting Tithing Blade, Tithing Blade. I was like, this card, ah. And so
Right?
I haven't seen it much in standard play, but I remember Tithing Blade.
Exactly. And speaking of Tithing Blade, so Tithing Blade and Hopeless Nightmare are both cards that do something when they enter the battlefield, but they will stay onto the battlefield. And so that means they can be returned with the Nurturing Pixie or even blinked with the Guardian.
Yeah. Also, shout out Nurturing Pixie. That was my very first preview card that I ever got. So
Oh,
I love that card. And I actually got to meet the artist, Iris Compiet, in Amsterdam. And I got a really neat artist proof and I had her sign it. So very exciting.
that is wonderful.
Happy to see Nurturing Pixie get some limelight in standard. All right. Now let's move on to Cora's opponent. We've got Nora, Cora and Nora matchup. Love that. She is on Dimir Midrange. This is a slightly different build than the Dimir Midrange deck we saw earlier. Um, the one we had earlier had more Gixes, so there's some less Gixes in this one. Uh, there are, I think, less Graveyard Trespassers, so slightly different build, but the same archetype.
Yes. And this is going to be, I think, a very, very interesting uh, match. The Tishana's Tidebinder is going to be, I think, really important here because being able to counter the triggered abilities of all of all of Cora's discard effects and enter the battlefield effect is going to be really, really important in trying to navigate the match and the card advantage flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think the only downside is that there's only 2 Tidebinders when I think in this matchup, 4 would have probably been more ideal, but that's what's fun about the VML is that every week opponents bring different decks, and while it is open deck list, it's always a surprise what those decks are gonna be, so
Hmm.
part of the fun. But alright, also shout out, Nora said her favorite planeswalker is Comet Stellar Pup. I think that's the first time I've ever seen Comet get some love, so great great choice, Nora.
Comet is a very cute puppy.
Yes. Let's get straight into the game now. I love the Vorthos
Hmm.
avatar. Alright, I believe Nora was seed number 2 this season, so that's a great accomplishment finishing the round robin so high in the season. This is a pretty strong start for Cora's hand. The Novice Inspectors, Tithing Blades. I think the only thing Cora really needs to draw into is some more lands.
Yeah, and this is one of the fun parts about Faye's deck is that with the Novice Inspector and the Pixie, you can just you always have stuff to do with your mana and you get to, have a lot of fun returning all these different permanents. Uh, Nurturing Pixie can also pick up your Tithing Blade, which, to get multiple uses out of that. So it's really a lot of card advantage in a white black deck, which makes it really, really fun to watch because it's different than what you might usually expect.
Yeah, white draws cards since when?
Exactly, exactly. And it's also really, really funny. We saw the counter spell being used there on a 1/1 flyer. It's like, is this really what I bring my counter magic in for?
Right? Yeah, this is a fun matchup already, and it's just begun. And we are
Hmm.
having a Liliana off now.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a queen fighting herself.
You know, I have that same struggle on the daily, so I feel you, Liliana. All right. I think Nora's saying, "I am the discard deck now."
No, exactly. And this is actually right now it's a very interesting board state for both of them because there's a lot of different ways you can navigate the next couple of turns. Cora might be thinking, okay, do I want to discard my Shieldred, which Faye does because maybe I just want to get rid of my hand as quickly as possible to make my opponent's Liliana not as effective against me. So there's just a lot of like, what do you think your opponent has in hand? Do I want to, uptick to make us both discard, or do I value my cards in my hand? So there's a lot of very interesting guesses going on here.
Yeah, this is so interesting. If I'm Cora, would granted, the tithing blade is not great right now, no creatures on board, but my thought is, would you actually want to discard the tithing blade? Or would you just play it out? Because I know that when you transform it, um, I think that's just incremental life loss.
Yes. And yeah, and so there's a lot of, do you think that's what's going to be valuable in the long term? Or, do you need something else? And now we have Liliana most likely getting attacked by pesky little infectors.
Oh, this is going to be so interesting. What are the chances that this is actually just a toxic deck and we have a toxic kill?
Right.
All right, Guardian of Gearfur coming out.
And this was played before the Liliana activation because you, if you do it the other way around, then you won't have a 3/3. So,
But we did talk about the two Tidebinders.
mhm,
So Tidebinder coming out, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I know that Tidebinder on creatures it's permanent. It's permanent on planeswalkers too, right?
correct. It's permanent on artifact creatures and planeswalkers.
Okay. I know that because you can stifle the land activations, but those aren't permanent since they go back to being a land. So
Mhm. And this is also an interesting thing because this is probably be Guardian blinking Guardian, and you could like blink it again. I don't think it does necessarily anything, but it gave at least you basically had a vigilance attack, and voila.
yeah, if you just keep blinking them, is that like an infinite combo that does nothing?
I mean, yeah. It takes up time and is cute, and sometimes that's all that we need to do.
That's how I live my life. I take up time and I like to think I'm cute. It's a mood.
Right? And so if Nora, I mean, it's going to become night whether or not Nora attacks or not. And this being a 4/4 glutton is much more powerful than a 3/3. Um
Yes, yeah.
wonderful commentary from me. And this is a very interesting position for, I think, Cora. Cora is going all out on the attacks, which is a very, very specific uh, observation of the game. It's like, look, I need to kill my opponent, and I might only have a couple of turns because as it goes out, my if I do nothing, my opponent's making these 1/1s and will eventually overwhelm me. And I need to put my opponent on a very quick clock. And with the is it the restless shambles or restless fortress that also, can attack and make your opponent lose 2 and you gain 2.
Mhm.
So that has potential, your opponent, depending on how many creatures are in the graveyard, the opponent might be dead in a couple turns.
Yeah, because that's 2 right there, 2 life gain, but when you're attacking with 6, potentially more, 7, 8, like, that's only a couple turns. Cora does have to be very careful, though, because, you know, Faye's also only at 9 with,
Yeah.
9 damage on board, so this is a little tricky.
Yeah, it's very, very tricky. And just it seems like the math might not be working out in Cora's favor here. Drawing a land obviously isn't the last thing Faye wanted.
Mhm. Cora can, however, tick Liliana down. It's not great because you just sacrifice a might, but
Well, the Liliana still can't use any of its
oh, never
abilities.
you're right, the
Mhm.
Tidebinder's there.
Yeah.
Completely forgot about that. So, here we have, what, 4? Ah, so, we're gonna have a small little break. Um, I was aware of this prior, so here's what is happening right now. Cora's cat decided to chew on a cord that gives you the internet.
Mm.
So, there was a small break, but ultimately, we're back. It looks like there was not enough damage, and so Nora just conceded that game because she was dead on the crackback.
Yeah. And now the sideboarding is always so interesting. uh, there's just a lot of, you know, guessing how your opponent's gonna react to, because a duress here again, sometimes it's a very, very powerful card, but when your opponent has a lot of creatures, it becomes a lot less, how do you say, good.
Yeah, that word.
Yeah. Yeah, that word. Um, and yeah, so it's just a very interesting, I don't know the basic game plan for Cora's deck seems, like it shouldn't change that much. We saw that the discard isn't necessarily maybe the most powerful thing to do against Nora's deck because Nora also was using Liliana and discarding as well. And that didn't seem to be that negative of a thing for her.
Mhm. I find it really interesting that um, I'm not sure how many of the Path of Perils were main boarded, but in that last game, the Path of Peril it seemed like a pretty like if it were drawn, like a pretty good option to take out all of those mites that Nora was making. Um, I don't necessarily
Yeah.
know if we're gonna see double Mirexes again, where that could
Yeah.
be relevant, but that last game, that would have been a good card to play.
Yeah. And that was also a very surprising show to me of the power of Mirix because I usually feel like Mirix is a much more powerful late game card, and it started creating creatures very, very quickly. And so, yeah, it just worked out very, very well for Nora there.
Right. Hopeless Nightmare coming out, causing a discard and some life loss. Um, I think that was a good turn one. Novice Inspector was also a consideration, but I think Novice Inspector on two seems okay here. Would you play out the Cavern of Souls?
Um, Potentially, it does Novice Inspector and Hostile Investigator share a creature type? Is it an orc or a human? Oh, they're both detectives. So it could have been a Cavern of Souls on detective.
Hmm. Yeah. So I think, not that I think it's impactful. There was no counter magic at play, but
Mhm.
I think just that was something to think about. This Liliana coming out right now is great because the Fairy Mastermind and Gix, that is that's pretty gross. Getting it in the air, drawing cards, and getting that incremental advantage, especially when you're playing against a discard deck, getting those extra cards, very, very impactful.
Yes. And
Ooh.
this Deep Cavern Bat on the Investigator is pretty brutal because that would have been an amazing fourth turn play for Cora. And now Faye is just left with 3 lands in hand. Or
Mhm.
I misspoke, 4.
Yeah, just kidding, 4.
Yeah.
Cora does at least have a clue that Fake and Crack,
Mhm.
um, so maybe can draw into something else. Probably smarter to wait until after Nora's main phases, just to try to avoid any more bats.
Mhm.
Nora looks like she's had a lot of gas. The bat
Yeah.
and then Gix, like, these are, some pretty strong plays from Nora's side.
Yeah, it has been going really, really well, and Cora's interaction and removal just hasn't lined up here.
Mhm.
Now, Cora could also sacrifice the Hopeless Nightmare to scry 2, which might potentially have been a decision if you think scrying to get to a better card might have been worth it over drawing a card. But, that
I
is who knows.
Yeah, I really like the fact that the Liliana's coming out here because pretty much any of those creatures leaving the board are good. I do think the Fairy Mastermind was the least impactful one,
Mhm.
but not too bad. And then here you play out the Nurturing Pixie. Do you pick up Liliana?
I think picking up Liliana is a really, really good decision here because you get to protect Liliana for the next turn, and then you can just immediately -2 to get rid of a creature.
Hmm.
The other alternative would be, the Hopeless Nightmare if you want to make your opponent discard, or the Novice Inspector if you want to draw another card. But I think the Liliana is probably the best bet, and Cora agreed.
I agreed as well. That's not great for Cora.
That is correct.
Yep, we're gonna see that Liliana come down again. At this point, I think not. I think keeping the both bats obviously is better. So I think I would be sacking my Gix. Or, the Acklazotz, just kidding. Acklazotz can come back. Now you have another land, so
Mhm.
that's fine. This is a little tricky because the blocks on Gix are a little funky. Um, but the bat definitely can't attack in. And I don't necessarily see Cora sacrificing the pixie to the Gix because then you no longer have a flyer. So the attacks are going to be a little interesting, but I think Cora is at least starting to stabilize against Nora's board.
Mhm.
And I like that she is drawing a card here to prevent Acklazotz from being able to be activated.
Yes. So Gix could what theoretically be activated for 3 here?
1, 2, 3, 4,
I think
8.
that's a very interesting. Okay.
Okay, not not the best hit, but also not the worst. Now the blocks get a little bit worse, but Nora just deciding not to attack at all.
Mhm.
This I think Cora's in a good spot. The Liliana uptick seems fine, especially when she just has 2 lands in hand.
And this might be a time to, at the end of the turn, use the Hopeless Nightmare to scry for hopefully some type of gas.
Or I think depending on if Nora activates Gix again, do you scry just to try to keep any action out of
Oh,
Nora's reach?
that's an interesting decision.
Okay, we're actually going to see a Restless Reef activation. I do love Sharkland. Honestly, I really love all the creature lands. I know it doesn't see much play, but I like the llama land as well. It's very cute.
Yes, very very cute. And also, there is an opportunity for Tithing Blade to be crafted, but I am not 100% sure. But I believe if Nora did try to craft with a creature, it would actually enter the battlefield under Cora's control. I think it returns under its owner's control.
Ooh.
So that might come into play as like a possible gotcha moment.
Mhm. I do love that Cora has the tithing blade here, being able to basically force uh, both of Nora's creatures to be sacrificed.
Oh yeah,
And
no, and this is incredible for Cora being able to get the hostile negotiator back, if that's what happens here, is going to greatly change the cadence of this game.
okay, forcing the pay to so that Cora actively, well, Nora didn't know that Cora had another. Just kidding. I think she did know, but this is fine.
Well, yeah, you still have to just do it because the
You're going to
you
discard it
don't
anyways.
yeah, and you also don't want it in your hand to be discarded, otherwise your the clue would be created.
Hmm. That's very true. All right, and as we knew, the Takanuma. What what is in Cora's graveyard for her to get back? Oh, unfortunately, Aquazotz is going to make a bat. I think the bat creation just made the Liliana a little worse. This is kind of awkward because Aquazotz being on the other side, these guardians, while not bad cards, it's going to be difficult to handle the Aclazats.
Yeah, it's definitely a very complex couple turns to navigate because there are a lot of targets with this Guardian here, and I think the Tithing Blade is
Mhm.
the easiest thing to do.
Yep. Goodbye, little baby bat. All right. At this point, do we have two rest? No, only the single Restless Reef activation, but that is still a big creature forcing damage.
Yeah, very very, very big creature.
At this point, do you think Cora trades off the hostile investigator for the Restless Reef?
Um, I hmm, good question. I think the Gear Peer should block the Trespasser. That's
Hmm.
a easy trade. Um, I'm not sure if you need to block with the Investigator here because if you throw away the Investigator here, you still have the Dreadship attacking next turn, so you're not
That
necessarily up anything. But this is a
that
really good draw.
sure is, yeah, a wonderful draw for Cora at this point in time.
It is
Oh,
one of the few ways to permanently get rid of those gods because they're exiled and they don't return as a land.
mhm. And you get a little bit of life gain to help pad that life total that is getting increasingly low. Okay. Not exactly what we want to see, but you know, it's another card deeper to more action. All right. If you are Nora, do you activate the Restless Reef and attack the Emperor, or do you just go face?
Oh, wow, that is tough. I think you want to kill the Emperor because if you put attack Cora, you put Cora at 3, which, now I think that maybe this is fine. I have no idea, honestly. I would have done the
Oh.
Emperor, but this now just leaves you with now one of your reefs need to get through and you can win.
Mm-hmm. And is that a
And that's
tenacious underdog that we just saw milled?
I think it was. Now, I don't know if that necessarily changes anything that much just because there's still only going to be 2 attackers,
Mm-hmm.
but the drawing from the tenacious underdog might be very relevant.
All right. We see the Restless Fortress getting in, dealing 2 damage. Well, technically dealing 3 damage, but also gaining Cora 2 more life, helping to pad that life total. I think it's going to be very relevant in this game. If the
Incredibly.
Yeah, if the Restless Reef attacks, Cora could double block it. I don't know if that's the right move, but going down to 1 also doesn't feel like the right move, so it's kind of scary.
Oh, and I didn't realize I misspoke. I thought Nora could still activate both reefs and attack, but this is why the tenacious underdog is relevant here because it allows for the 2 attackers. I thought Nora could have done that. So yeah, the milling of the underdog was very relevant. But Cora still only needs to block one of them.
Mhm. This is really tough because now Nora's at 9. We know that we have 2 damage on board, another 3 damage with the fortress. So that's still not quite enough to take Nora out, but it's also not it's not nothing.
Correct.
Because Nora could take, or Cora could take one more beat from the underdog and survive and block the Restless Reef. right now, though, um, it's just gonna be really difficult. It's because if there's any removal spell, it's just game.
Exactly.
Mhm. It was such a close game too. What's crazy is that's only game 2.
Uh, w was that the game 2 even with the concession? I don't remember how that happened. Or so that was okay, yeah, so now we're going to game 3, okay.
Mhm. So we still have one more game to see
Oh,
which
this
one
is
of these 2
very
players.
exciting.
Yeah. Not a bad way to end the stream, right? To have
Yeah,
such
yeah,
a
yeah.
close nail biter.
Yeah, and there were, like, a lot of very interesting and complex things going on there, so I'm excited to see how this match or this game goes.
That was such a good back and forth because you basically forced the other into having something, otherwise you were just gonna go to 1 life and take it on the crackback.
Mhm.
Alright. It looks like one did one hostile negotiator come out, or looks like
Hmm,
the Elish Norn came out.
yes. I don't know how many enter the battlefield effects it would stop, but Ellis Norn would double your own, which seems like the important part here.
Yeah, I think the double discard, double tithing blades on ETB, and also what the double blinks,
Mhm.
that's pretty relevant, but it also is a lot of mana and hard to
You
get
need all
to.
those cards to get together.
Mhm. Ooh, okay. Yeah, that was a really rough first hand with only 1 mana. This one, a little bit slower, but definitely a better keep. It looks like Nora also went down 1. Alright, Hopeless Nightmare was a good draw.
Yeah, and Hopeless Nightmare, sadly, is not an artifact or a creature, so it cannot be blinked with the Guardian.
Make disappear. Yep. Alright, the Graveyard Trespasser. Starting early with the Graveyard Exile. That I was gonna say the Tithing Blade looks pretty strong here, but Liliana looks a little better.
Yeah, there are a lot of different you could have also gone for the Shieldred and made your opponent have to have a big removal spell, you use up all your mana, and then this turn, Cora could have theoretically double spelled by casting a Tithing Blade and the Liliana. But right now, it seems like
If I'm Cora,
they
sorry.
pardon?
I was just saying if
No,
I'm
no, no, go.
Cora, I definitely play the Cavern here and play out Sholdred.
Yes. And
Okay.
then you're gonna hold on to the Tithing Blade, and then next turn plus Liliana, hopefully.
Mhm.
And when you're Nora in this position, you also go, "Oh, wow, my opponent did not plus Liliana." So that means the card in their hand is relevant.
Mhm. Oh, this is, in just the perfect amount of mana to oh, okay. That's
Yeah,
also
so
not a
Cora
bad
here
choice.
yeah, Cora here is trying to snuff out some type of, like, counter magic or interaction here, which
Yeah, not
int
not too bad. We're gonna get the Tithing Blade, so I'm assuming the Fairy Master actually, the Tidebinder, it kinda already did its thing,
mhm.
so it wouldn't be the worst. It does block the Pixie, but yeah.
Are we going to be drawing that Tithing Blade there? I was excited to see the craft right now, but I think, yeah, getting rid of the mastermind while you can is very, very important.
Mhm. I was gonna say it's a little hard to tell, but I don't think Nora has any of the shark lands just yet.
Mm.
Right. So I think we may see a craft next turn potentially.
Which I am incredibly excited about because I am a pro craft player.
All right. Gonna sack that hopeless nightmare. Hopefully find something. What does the Akanjo do anything for Cora here? It, I guess it could get rid of the Bronco, but I almost think that the Liliana that it may have been better to play the Aganjo out as a land because now you're risking just discarding it to the Liliana uptick.
Yeah, but Cora made a decision and hoped that Nora would have drawn something not worth or
Mhm.
making Liliana not, and that worked out incredibly well.
Good. Okay, seeing a hearse on Nora's side. For Cora, how much graveyard recursion? Like, I'm trying to think if there's a ton of graveyard recursion on their side or how relevant this hearse is gonna be.
I I think outside of Takanuma, not much.
So that hearse may just be, good for potentially just growing and having a really large attacker since there's gonna be so many cards in graveyard.
It also would it stops the Aclazats from dying and returning back, and Rite of Oblivion.
Hmm. I was gonna say, is Cora playing any Aclazotses on her side?
There's one in the main deck,
One in the main. Okay.
and I think it was in this game.
Gotcha. Nora did get the shark land, so we are having a battle of creature lands going back and forth here. Oh,
Uh,
speak of the I guess it's not a devil, it's a bat god. Speak of the bat god.
Speak of the bat.
But I suppose Nora could always just crew the hearse and sacrifice that, but I think it's better just to sacrifice Akazats, get it back. You are running the risk, however, of yeah, I think you crew the hearse, sack Akazats, have a blocker for this turn because Nora's life total is starting to get kind of scarily low.
I'm even sadly though, I don't think Core has enough mana to activate an attack.
Yeah, I don't think so, not this turn. But she can sacrifice the hopeless nightmare to hopefully um
Find something cool to do.
mhm. Yeah, any given night, trying to find something cool to do.
Exactly.
All right, we're seeing a Mirrex come out. Those pesky little mites um, are going to be, if we see any more tithing blades or sacrifice effects, not going to be great for Cora. All right, what does the hostile investigator do for Cora at this point?
Right now, sadly, nothing really big or relevant, but it might be something you need to take to hope you can come back into this game.
Yeah, and hopefully maybe push some damage.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's going to be an uphill battle trying to um, fight the Aclazot's life gain.
Exactly. But right now it seems like Nora is in the position where as long as both players' top decks are, roughly the same value, Nora's in a good position because
Yeah,
Aclazotz is just gonna take away the game.
absolutely. Especially with the hearse growing ever larger, the restless reefs. It's it's definitely not looking great for Cora here.
Now that being said, a top deck Wandering Emperor or something could do wonders.
Yes, absolutely. Aclazot's going over at Liliana while the reef coming at Cora. Your Cora, do you trade the reef off or just
I think you just have to take it and hope that you can get some type of card advantage with Investigator.
mhm. Well, not quite the investigator we needed, but it's not nothing. Could potentially draw into something else. But looking to activate the fortress, unable to crew the hearse, but the cut down will unfortunately kill our fortress.
And Hearst is a crew too, so unless that last card is a fairy mastermind, the investigator is going to be safe.
Hmm.
Relatively safe.
Safe for now.
Yeah.
We're still at a healthy 15 life total, but that hearse being at 8, Aclazot's 4, and a restless reef, Cora is gonna have to chump. Most likely gonna have to chump something. Because I don't think Nora has enough to make a second might and activate the restless reef, but just an 8/8 and a 4/4, that's a lot of damage pushing through.
Hmm. Oh, just attacking with the bat. So I wonder what else is in hand.
Yeah, the bat attack is the safe one for now because even though Nora was at 9, that still is kind of a scary low life total.
Yes.
You never know how a single draw can change these games. There will be a might activation. I believe that we can now both activate the Risen Reef and crew the hearse.
Now, one of the good things for Cora is, and this, I believe this is how it's going to happen, but with the attack on the Aclazotz, it will trigger the hostile investigator to investigate. So you do end up getting a draw.
Hmm. I do believe that it is correct. All right, so we have 8844. That 8/8 will have to be chumped by the investigator just for Cora to stay alive. I think a Wandering Emperor needs to be the draw just in order to keep Cora in the game, but then there needs to be an answer for the hearse as well. What does this Guardian do? Because even if you blink the Tithing Blade, there's plenty of just little little kind of meaningless 1/1s.
It might just blink the investigator to get another clue, potentially.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like the worst, but having to crack the clue, I don't know if there's too many answers that Cora could still do with mana available. And Urtai coming out is definitely going to say no answers for Cora. Hmm.
Now, Braids sadly is not her best here because when you sacrifice the artifact, your opponent can sacrifice a Might token, and it doesn't necessarily get rid of the hearse here. So yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what you would have wanted to do.
Hmm. Those pesky mites also being artifacts. All right. Well, I think if the maths, I think
And I
this
think it does.
might be game. Well, this was an extremely hard fought battle between these two incredible competitors.
Oh, absolutely. It was very, very tough game. Lots of stuff to navigate and consider, and it was hard fought.
Congratulations to Nora for making it on to our top 16 and great job. It was an incredible match. You played so well, Cora. Thank you both for being on coverage. Thank you to all of our competitors that we had the pleasure of viewing your matches tonight. Thank you so much, Steve, for being here.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank
Thank
you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Thank you. Also, a huge thank you to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring us. We could not make this happen without you. And we also had a lovely producer tonight. Niall stepped in because Phoebe had to take a Friday off. And so, thank you so much for running this for us, Niall. You did a wonderful job. And lastly, thank you to everybody that came out and watched and hung out. The reason we do this is for your viewing pleasure. So, thank you, everybody. This was a wonderful top 32, and can't wait for top 16 next week. But yeah,
I'm
any last
excited.
words? Any last words, Steve?
Uh, no, keep it up. This is amazing, and good luck to all the competitors in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah. All right. Well, be back next week, top 16. We're going to see who makes it through to the top 8. And at the top 8, we'll see who just wins it at that week. So the next couple of weeks are going to be great. Make sure to come out. Can't wait to see you. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening and a great weekend to all of you out there.